And good evening. Welcome to the Dominance Academy. I'm your host, Mr. Justin. And to me, talking about the four sexual principles. And they're not super complex. There's nothing really crazy, special, unique about them. But when we lay them out in such a simple order, it'll make a lot of sense. And if you put this stuff into practice, it will make things so much easier. I think guys spend way too much time thinking, considering too many details, and it muddies the process, and it's really just unnecessary. So that's what we're going to be getting into this evening, and we'll meander afterwards, as we always do here at the academy, because teaching is not always linear. Um, so I hope you're having a good weekend, and things are being productive for you, staying on top of your shit, because without that keeping you going, it's not a good move. Not a good move. You got to stay focused and keep up with the things that you know you need to keep up with. All right. So let me just find this. I am trying to deal with this crazy New York temperatures right now at 9:44 p.m. It's something like 6 degrees, and then with the wind chill, it's negative 13 or 14. So, yeah, that's no good. Not a good time. I think like at that temperature, skin starts freezing. So, I'm staying indoors until this shit blows over. Let me just get a little organized here. Last night's show I thought was pretty good. That was that was a good show. So, um, if you didn't catch that one, please listen to that. I'd say that like the last 20 minutes, they hit pretty hard. So the four sexual principles, they're pretty straightforward. And you put this into practice, and everything will be golden, really. So the first one here, to get into it, is mind over matter. And no, this isn't like some kind of like Jedi mind trick or something along those lines. That's not it at all. It's really understanding that the mind, her mind, is the greatest tool, right? It's not it's not having a certain thing. It's not like, it's understanding the primary G spot for girls is her mind. It's her imagination and her emotions. It's the intangibles. And the funny thing is that like when guys look at things, they look at women with their own eyes, which is weird. You got to look at women from the perspective of women, not from the perspective of men. So like if you've ever like drastically changed your physique, you're going to get more attention from men. And I don't mean this in like a gay sense, but guys, we admire people who do hard work. We admire people who achieve something that's really difficult to do. Like let's say someone has like an old like an old Ford Mustang or something like that from the 60s, like 65 Mustang, and they rebuild it and bring it to a car show, and the engine's immaculate. Like a lot of guys, before understanding things, are like, oh, I'll get a cool car, and then like all the girls will want to hang out with me. And like really, if you do that, like you'll get more attention from men saying like, that's a cool car, can we open the hood, like let's check it out, like what kind of carburetors are on that motor. It's the same thing with bikes, like building a business or whatever, just the things that we think are awesome. And when you're naive, you think it's going to attract girls, but it actually just attracts more guys, because just we have respect for certain things, and we have interest or sometimes even envy for these things. And girls just are not like that. It's just not how it works for them. What really works for them is their mind, their imagination, and their emotions. And this is because her getting off is largely dependent on how she feels about herself, how she feels about you, and how she feels about the situation. And this is why, like, some girls, they will suck a guy's dick in the bathroom of some fucking dive bar. It's because of her emotions. It's how her emotions affected her decision making. Okay. And then where there's like a guy who maybe has a better outfit, a better life, a better apartment, a better home, a better car, and maybe socioeconomically he's better in that sense, but he provides zero emotions. He's not going to be able to pull her into that bathroom. You know what I'm saying? It's this, like, maybe the guy's dick she was sucking was a fucking dirtbag. Okay. And you're like, how? He's a dirtbag lowlife. It's because for whatever reason, he was able to spark her emotions, and emotions dictate change. This is what marketers and advertisers understand. Like if you've ever taken like a comm design class and you took it far, not just one class, but you took comm design in a very far path in college, you learn a whole bunch of psychological tips and tactics to get people to buy shit. And the whole notion is to warp their emotions, is to guide them in such a way emotionally that their decisions feel like their decisions, even though they're influenced by what you've done. And it's a very real thing. So the mind over matter part, the first principle is understanding this, that when she, like, you think, okay, to get girls, I need a sports car. Like if I had a nice ride, I would get all the girls. And you might in a certain way, but that's not actually getting them. Like getting them is when they go into like retard mode, when they don't think as much, when all they do is feel and all they want to do is just like they want to please you, they want to be around you, they want to feed off of your energy. Okay. Sure, maybe the car or the outfit or the physique might help, but it's those things don't penetrate her. Okay. When a woman is masturbating, she's not thinking about a fucking Maserati. Okay. She's not. She's not thinking about a Rolex. She's actually flooding herself with feelings. And those are attached to scenarios in her mind. but it's not the scenarios that's doing it. It's the emotion that she's injecting into it. Okay. So if there's like, say, like like an abduction idea in her head, and if you take the feeling of this abduction, pardon me, if you take the feeling of this abduction and put fear into it, it's going to drop the arousal completely. But you take this abduction scenario and you inject arousal, tension, intrigue, mystery into all this stuff. And then he's like handsome or faceless, because a lot of times in women's fantasies, there's no face there, right? It's something that's happening to her. This generates a different feeling off of the same kind of scenario. So you understand that the emotion is the most potent factor here. Okay. This is what's most powerful. And that's why it's a principle, that mind over matter, right? Because frankly, when you understand this at a very high level, you don't even need to touch her. You don't even need to use any of your money. You don't need to use any sort of space or time. All you need is the ability to communicate with her. That's it. Just communication alone can alter her emotions in such a way that physiologically she starts feeling things. Emotionally, she's like, you can harness one emotion and then it cascades into another emotion. And this is something that's just, I know it's harder to grasp because it's not something you can just go buy. It's not something you can just like go to and develop, like going to the gym, right? It kind of like goes over the heads of a lot of guys. Like, well, how do I do that? How do I develop the ability to confidently and skillfully augment someone's emotions? And then because for the most part, a lot of guys feel very uncomfortable with that, because they're like, that's like manipulation. And it's like, yeah, but if there's already interest, then am I really manipulating her into doing something she doesn't want to do? No, right? A lot of times, like when it comes to sales, the best, most easy sales happen when the seduction from the marketing meets someone who already has the desire, but is just like waiting to like pull the trigger. They're a little hesitant to pull the trigger on the purchase, but they really want the thing. That's where the marketing comes in. That's where the advertising comes in to sort of coerce those feelings, okay? To kind of just tipping over the edge. Now, I'm not saying that you should be utilizing any sort of um, emotional influence on a woman who is not interested in you, okay? That's just a fool's errand. It's really kind of creepy. It's very pickup artist like, and I don't advise doing that. The best thing uh, is really to only fuck with my interest in you. That's it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it to her. It's not worth it to you to mess with girls who just aren't interested enough. So I look at it like cooking. I can't cook with lukewarm water. I can't cook with cold water. I can only cook with boiling water. Like that's the only useful water for me. I want heat because with that, now um, I have more flexibility in like how I'm going to utilize it and how I'm going to bounce this around and course to go this direction or that way because there's a lot of potential energy, right? The more energy you have, the more potential there is to use it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not going to fuck with girls who have low interest. Um, and you can just kind of like put out some little feelers here and there to just gauge a little bit of how much her interest is. Because within each category, right, low, middle, and high, there's also variables, right? So like classes, there's not just middle class, there's upper middle class, middle class, and lower middle class. So if she's got high interests, there's lower high interest, middle high interest, and high interest. And so you need to kind of like be patient and observe where she's at, and that will determine where and how much I want to expend because I don't want to waste my time and I don't want to waste hers. So, um, so yeah, going back to like this here, the mind over matter. This is this is paramount, right? And to learn how to do this, like unfortunately, yes, you can probably figure it out doing research and this and that, but um, the practice of it is totally different, and this is why it's only taught as something part of my mentorship, and not because I want to withhold secret stuff. It's not like that. It's because who is doing it is just as important as what is done. So if the who is fucked up with weird attachments, he's got a less than full cup. He's looking to women to make him feel better about himself. He needs validation. He's low in confidence. He's dealing with problems from his past. This is all going to affect all that stuff because it's going to change your motivations. And when your motivations change, your outcomes change. So, so that's why I can't really just say, okay, this is how you influence someone's emotions. Surely you could just go on GPT and or do some Google research and just find out this or that, and that might be the case. But again, it's not only a matter of what is done. Okay. Just like with BDSM, like I can do certain things, right? But it takes on a completely different feature when I change who is doing it. Because I can have like some neediness, I can have some fear, which makes me cause to grasp for control, which then changes when I'm giving commands. It changes when I'm um, say taking control of various aspects of her life. If I have motivations of fear, which is a grasping, it makes me grasp for control, versus not having any fear, not having those attachments. And the control that I have is an invitation that she willingly walks into. And she feels genuinely good about the control that's been inflicted on her life. That's totally different. So it's in the same stuff, the same parameters, like with pretty much anything. just who is doing it and their mentality and the state that they're in totally changes the thing that's done. So it's not just a matter of technique. And again, this is why I abhor pickup artistry, because guys will think, "Oh, here's the things that I can do," because it's something you can actually write about. You can make lists of techniques. You can make, kind of draw up manuals, so to speak, that can be disseminated throughout a large swath of men. And it will only work, so to speak, for certain guys because they have a certain kind of mentality. Probably a mentality that they didn't need the techniques anyways. But for the most that are not like that, there's going to be a problem. And so they're going to, plug away and come to a harsh realization. And then they'll be like, "Oh, this is bullshit. It doesn't work." And it's like, yeah, because there's an idiot behind the wheel. There's an undeveloped person behind the wheel. Right? There's someone who hates themselves behind the wheel. It's matters. It's a very crucial aspect. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, but that changes things. It alters things tremendously when you start considering, who is doing the thing. So mind over matter is simple, but it's complex. Okay. And that's the reason why I can't really explain exactly what to do, because I have to know who's doing it in order to actually make it effective. All right. So the second one here is the importance of power. And I think with this channel, we understands that this is an important aspect, but this only applies to men who understand and embody the responsibility of being dominant. It has nothing to do with control. It has to do with leading her emotionally and physically. So the importance of power comes with the understanding of power. And when you understand something, you're trying to gain an entire holistic understanding of something, not just like one particular aspect of it. So this is with anything that you want to be good at, right? So like let's say I wanted to play, I don't know, fucking hockey. Sure, I could just learn some skills and get out on the ice and play hockey. But imagine what it would be like for me if I were to learn the history of it. If I were to learn, just a broader range of information about hockey and really get to understand what it was all about. Um, I think that would really help with my understanding of it, and then the role that I play in that as I become part of this thing. Okay. Now that's just one directional. There's, let's say there's another one where there involves like two people. Okay. Um, like if I was learning like business management, okay, and I was like, all right, I want to manage something. It's not just a matter of having an employee and telling them what to do. There's a broader range of leadership and guidance, as well as like understanding the structure that you're running. That is, it encompasses a wider range of information, like including understanding the person that you're leading. This understudy, this intern, this employee, or whatever. Um, versus if you just keep it like very surface level. So the more you understand how power works, how power differentials work, and really you can feel them, right? You have to become sensitive to these things. Again, you cannot understand power just by looking at the things that are done. So there's just giving simple commands such as like say like get on your knees. This surely it's a very simple command and anyone can say this, provided they have working vocal cords. But it's different when you understand like how power feels. Like if you understand how being wrapped up in that makes the woman feel, and the what's going on with her when she is genuinely learning to let go, uh, what she's going through emotionally, and and not in a bad sense, but like what she's letting go of and what she's embodying and what that feels like to her. Um, Certainly, you don't have to know these things, but then you're not fully understanding power. Like to really understand power and how it works, you've got to really know what both ends look like. So there's a number of things like a very basic example. Whenever I get a new toy, I test it out on myself. I don't just like let it sit there. Like I get like a new whip or something like that. I'm like, well, I need to know what this feels like so I get an understanding of how much force creates a certain type of feeling. Now, granted, my nervous system, I'm receiving a blow is not going to be the same as someone else, right? We're all wired a little bit different, but I'm going to get a general idea of what this tool feels like. And so pretty much everything I've tried, and you know, not all of them were pleasant. Like I have a one of those training collars for dogs, like the shock collar. And I was trying to figure it out. It's a very complicated little device. I was like going through the manual and stuff, and the controller for it. It was just hard to understand because there's like many settings on it. And I wasn't wearing the collar, but I just had it in my hands. And there's like these two prongs that kind of stick up on the shock collar, and they just kind of touch on the dog's neck. And I just had my thumb crossing both of the electrodes, just touching them to close the circuit. And I'm trying to figure out like how to just test it. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I pressed something and it went off. Like it sent a signal. And it fucking shot my arm straight. Like I couldn't, it made my arm go straight out, complete lockout. And in a second, it just shot out of my hand. The collar flew across the fucking room, and I had no control over what I just did. It was shocking to say the least, right? Pardon the pun. But I was like, holy shit, right? So now, and I think this is on like a medium setting. So now I have an understanding, at least a little bit, of what that's like, right? Of what it feels like to have that shock go through my system on a moderate level. Okay. And so this is just something to keep in mind, like as you are, trying to understand power. Like that's just one example, like on like a very small physical example of power. All right. And sometimes take this even further. They go on a much further angle, and they say, well, you can't actually be a good dom until you understand what it is to be a sub, until you are actually living and operating on the bottom, that you're not going to really understand what it is to be on the top. And I can understand that sentiment, but I'm not going to try to be something that I'm not, right? Because I'm about being in my authenticity. So there's, I don't have to like do the opposite of everything to understand what it is that I want or what it is that I am. Especially if you can just connect with yourself authentically. But for others that want to take that route, I understand it, and go at it, like enjoy yourself. But that's not something that I would do. But I'm not going to judge anyone who feels that that's the right thing for them. But again, like whatever it is that you need to do, you need to just get away from this idea that power is just like a thing that you do. It's an understanding that comes with feeling certain things. And then also coming to the clarity that there is a responsibility involved. There's a huge responsibility involved with this stuff. Okay, sorry about that. Hey, Peggy, you here? Oh, great. Yes, the new book for subs, the Annals of the Yielded Queen. I think you meant to say exquisite. I bought it immediately, and it is poetic and sacred. Right. I'm glad you enjoy it. Yeah, it's the sort of thing where you just kind of open it up to any page, and you can just pull a little bit of wisdom. Just read it like in the morning. Just randomly grab any passage in there, give it a read, and just let it marinate with you all day. But I'm glad you're enjoying that, Becky. Appreciate you. All right, so moving on. So the importance of power, right? The next one is instinct over technique. So clearly you're seeing a pattern here where I'm saying like getting away from the doing, getting away from technique, like that's not your problem. Instinct over technique. Sex is not a problem solving thing, right? You shouldn't have a problem solving mentality around sexuality. A woman who wants a dominant man isn't interested in his knowledge of anatomy. Excuse me. She's not interested in knowledge of anatomy, his knowledge of skills. She wants a man who understands sex at a deep level, who is in touch with his animal desires and freed from inhibiting social conditioning. And now, let me just clarify that being in touch with your animal desires doesn't mean that those animal desires are running you. Okay. Getting in touch with them is just having an understanding of them. Okay. Because part of being dominant is is dominating over impulses. Okay. Now, of course, there's going to be some doms that are closer to being more animal like. Okay. And these are what we would call primals. And that's perfectly fine. But that's just like one small category. I think in general that it's a good idea for dumbs to learn how to first get in touch with deeper with those impulses and then learn to control them. Because a controlled beast that obeys is much more terrifying than a beast that's just wild. Okay. The flying off the handle. Like I gave the example of like a killer, right? And there's that wild killer who's just enraged and he's got like a machete or something like that. And he's like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, and like spits flying out of his mouth, versus like the Hannibal Lecter, who just can stand there and quietly, calmly stare you down. And he's like, I'm gonna kill you. And there's such conviction, like just calm conviction as though it's already happened. You just don't know it yet. That's much more terrifying than the wild guy with the machete. Okay. Um, but anyways, this idea of like instinct over technique, a lot of guys look at sex as the sort of thing that they have to figure out. And really it's something for you to get in touch with. It's not something that's driven by technique. Sure, there's techniques that can help. Okay. And in my book, like How to Be a Dominant Lover, you go over some of the things that are technique based. Okay. Yes, it's better to like learn how to eat pussy versus just feeling your way through. But having a heightened sense of feeling, and I don't mean like emotion feeling, but feeling cues off of people, like subtle cues, this will benefit you tremendously as a lover. Okay. Whether you're dominating, whether you're, just something simple like, going down on a girl, um, to giving commands, to, corporal punishment or torture, like all of these things, they're much better when you have a heightened level of sensitivity to pick up on subtle cues, subtle emotional cues, subtle physiological cues, and being able to read them is, it's irreplaceable, right? It's a necessary thing to have, and this is like part of the things that creates bad doms or fake doms. Is the guy who's too headstrong about doing a certain thing and he's not paying attention, right? Especially if the girl has fallen deep into subspace. And subspace is basically like an altered state of consciousness that is brought about through either like high levels of pleasure or high levels of pain or a mixture of the two. And the result is the brain gets absolutely flooded with all sorts of brain chemicals plus adrenaline. If there's pain involved, the adrenaline gets added to the mix. And they basically just start tripping out. And it's sort of like this, like a dissociative feeling. Like the person goes into like a dissociative state where they're not really responsive. They're not very cognizant of where they are, who they are, what's happening. And because of that, and they're just like feeling really, really good. I'm told that it's sort of like this dreamy, floaty sort of sensation. And the problem is the non-responsiveness. So that means safe words are gone. Even like responses to certain things are gone. Like what typically would cause the face to wince in pain no longer does. So that's when the sensitivity actually has to be higher for the Dom. You have to be paying attention to other things to indicate that she's okay or she's not okay. Um, but these like, bad DOMs or fake DOMs, they're so driven by doing that they lose sight of the things that they need to be watchful of. Okay. And this can get them into trouble. It can lead to emotional damage, psychological damage, or physical damage. And then they're left with these girls out here and they go on FetLife and they're like, there's so many fake DOMs out here, or I fucking hate men, or I've lost complete trust in men, or I've lost trust in DOMs. I can't find a DOM who I can trust because they were brought to a place of freedom and openness and vulnerability, and they were not treated properly once in that state. And this can even doesn't have to go so far as like something like subspace, but this is what happens with girls on the regular. Just trusting a guy to a certain degree with her emotions, and then he just fumbles it because he's too concerned with looking cool, looking good, or doing the right thing, or whatever he thinks the right thing is, and he fumbles the whole thing, and she ends up getting hurt, and then she's like, you know, then she goes on her, her healing quest. You can always see those in the on Instagram, where the girl like has this whole shift, and she's all about like healing the self and becoming whole, and you know, I guess like that's the phase after getting pissed off and not needing a man. They're like focus back on healing. Um, and it's funny because if a man does this correctly in the first place, she doesn't need to go through all those things. Um, like the healing can be done without having to be harmed first and gone through hatred and all that crap. But anyways, so kind of losing the traction here, but being being in tune with your instincts is a much more valuable like tool or skill set than the actual skill. Like learning how to read her, learning to read when she wants more, when she needs less, um, like to where she's communicating with you, but not verbally. She's communicating with her eyes. She's communicating with the flush of her skin. She's communicating with her muscular tension. She's communicating with her perspiration or not. She's communicating with her breathing rate. Okay, her heart rate. There's so many different things that are are available to you to read what's going on with her. Okay, and I can't stress this enough, but you're going to be a terrible reader if you are immersed in your own pleasure. If you're completely immersed in whatever it is that you want, you're not going to be able to lead very well because you're going to kind of be like a horse with blinders on. Your system is going to be so flooded that you're not paying attention. And that's not to say that something bad will happen, but you're missing out on so much more good of like what could happen, what would be good. You're missing out on creative opportunities for one. You're missing out on the ability to create further containment such that she can lose herself even more and perhaps bring her closer and closer to the dissociative fugue state or the or subspace. Okay. So um the dissociative fugue state um is actually, let me see here. I wrote about this. Fugue. Oh, there it is. Dissociative fugue state. So, um, It's when she's like a lot of times it's like when she's achieved like a number of orgasms, like very close behind each other, like after one another, like a line of train cars. And it can be held upwards for like 30 minutes even. But don't understand that this is like a 30-minute orgasm. That's not what it is. It's a sustained state of high arousal just below an orgasm with levels of pleasure flowing in and out of orgasm. So she's like brought up to the edge place and then brought into orgasm and then brought back down, but not way down. It remains at a high point. Um, and so the dissociative fugue state is basically she just kind of gets cut off from her mind. Okay. And so really in psychiatry, it's technically a rare psychiatric state, often a subtype of dissociative amnesia characterized by sudden, unexpected travel away from home, coupled by with memory loss regarding one's identity. Okay, so individuals may assume new identities with episodes of lasting hours to months, often triggered by severe trauma or stress. So, so yeah, that's like they're having like this like identity shift, and that's what the real dissociative fugue state is. But it's kind of like using that term and loosely, right? It's not real. It's not the real clinical version of that. But really, it's having like a gap in identity, a gap in time, a gap in what's happening, and she just basically becomes completely immersed in what's happening. And there's like very like the line between self and action becomes blurred. Okay. Um, so the last one here is the last principle is good sex is the king of attraction. There are social means of attraction. There's a number of them, but they pale in comparison to the attraction you can create through good sex. And the reason for that is that sex has the potential of becoming the most intensely emotional act that humans are capable of. So, that said, if you are already a good lover, or you've read my book and have become a good lover, then you're going to have to be very choosy. By which you're going to have to be very choosy with whom you give good sex to. So this is going to be a problem where if you learn the things to do, but you are very needy for women's attraction. So because this what could possibly happen is that you fuck a bunch of women and then you're not holding back. You're giving them like these great sexual experiences that you've learned how to create. But because of your neediness, you're wanting to suck in all of that attention that they would then be giving you because it's good sex is the king of attraction. So now you've got all these girls who are basically like wanting more of you and becoming addicted to you, and you're not going to be able to attend to all of them. And maybe you don't even like all of them. You're just using them, and because of a weakened state of having an empty cup and needing this crap from women. So now you've got this management issue on your hands. So that's a potential problem. Okay. Uh, this is why I suggest, like, if you are the type of person to have, excuse me, the type of person to have casual sex, right, with random girl here or there, whatever. It's advisable. You don't have to, but it's advisable that you do not give them platinum level sex, because unless you're willing to have this girl get addicted to you, because then you're going to have to manage that energy coming at you, unless you just want to be like, bitch, get the fuck out of my face, and then break her heart, and then that causes a cascade of a whole bunch of other things, and and then you're part of the problem. Okay, this like larger social problem that we have. So preventing that, I would say, is to just give mediocre dick. And your ego has to become okay with that, with her having that perception of you. Like, It's okay. It's not stellar, it's not shit, but it's okay. Like I could do it again, but it's not changing my life, you know? And your ego has to be all right with that. Okay. Because it's like just enough for her to like be comfortable and keep coming back. Um, and that's something that's much easier to manage than managing a girl who's obsessed with you, who needs your dick in her holes like all the time and needs to be around you, is like falling for you, and you don't want to deal with her. Like that's not a good look. That's not good foresight. That's not good planning. Okay. That's not a good um allocation of resources, right? So that's being very hasty with your resources. And we don't want to do that. Okay. So to know that like the way I look at these things is like I know, like first of all, I don't enjoy having just mediocre sex, right? To me, that's kind of like, you ever have like a partially stuffed up nose and or like so bad of a stuffy nose that you can't taste anything, and then you just like don't even want to eat? Or partially stuffy where you can like kind of sort of taste the food, maybe like on your way to getting better, and you can sort of taste the food. That to me is like how giving mediocre sex is. It's like, yeah, it's enjoyable, but like, I don't know. I just don't really like that. I want to really taste my food, you know? And this is the only way I want to eat. Like I don't want to just have like these partial meals, this lukewarm situation, lukewarm interest, lukewarm interaction, uh, low level or mediocre flavor. I don't want that, right? I want the top, always wide open throttle. That's what I want. So that means, like, if that's the choice that I'm making, I have to be very choosy, right? Because I know that it's going to have a particular effect. And therefore, I cannot just do that to any girl because then I have to deal with them. All right. Because I am not the type of person who's just going to uh, dismiss somebody. Right. I'm not just gonna be like, you're fucking crazy. Like, I've made you crazy. Now I don't like that you're crazy and I don't want to deal with it. So I'm just going to get rid of you. Even though if I had just better, um, if I had better understanding, like if I was a better leader, then I would say, well, I'd have the foresight and go, well, I can tell that I already know that this is a person that I don't want to have like in my back pocket all the time. So I'm not even going to bother. I'm not even going to bother with this person because I already know, like just by a little bit, that they're not going to be suitable. They're not going to be suitable to take further down, right? Because for me, it's not just fucking. It includes training. It includes influence. It includes rewiring them to become someone that is capable of serving. It's not just getting my dick sucked. Who cares about that? Right? That's not a big deal. That's going to happen anyways. You know. Um, oh yeah, for sure. There's a lot of fake subs as well. That is a very real thing. Absolutely. Um, and this is also why you need to take things slow. I'm a very very patient person. And I've had a number of fake subs where they're either performative and they're just trying to like get something out of you, or they're trying to show off like they're the subbiest sub that there ever was, or they've got what's known as sub frenzy, where they're very new and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to do everything. What's limits? I have no limits. I don't need a safe word. I just take me, right? And at that point, I'm just like, no, no, no. Like you're pumping the brakes, and we're gonna go at a pace that I'm comfortable with, not because you're just so fiery hungry. Like, and there's plenty of guys who are gonna take you up on that, but that's not gonna be me, right? I might call up a friend and be like, hey, here, you want to take this like crazy little monkey off my hands because she's just too erratic, too crazy, right? So be mindful of that. But yes, you're absolutely right. Bloody hack. There's definitely fake subs out there to be mindful of. Um, so yeah, back to like the good sex being king of attraction. Okay, uh, like a good orgasm just completely destroys a guy being over 6 feet tall. It completely destroys a guy being handsome. It destroys the guy who has a lot of money. It destroys the guy who's got a nice car or a nice house. It destroys all of those. Reason being is that money doesn't create strong emotions. Looking at or being next to a handsome guy does not create strong emotions. And then what I mean by strong is a penetrative emotional experience that either that probably simultaneously shuts off their mind and rips open their heart. That's a penetrative emotional experience. No certain amount of like height measurements can do that. No amount of money can do that. No, like flight on some personal plane is going to do that. No great haircut or chiseled jawline is going to do that. No amount of tattoos is going to do that. No lifestyle or amount of fame is going to do that. But sex, if done properly with the right kind of communication, this absolutely can do that. And this is where we've heard many stories, we've experienced it ourselves perhaps, where there's this girl and she is fucking addicted to some guy. And her friends are like, "How?" They're looking at him and going, "How are you how are you so addicted to this dude?" And it's because of the sex. And it's not just sex, it's because that guy probably knows what he's doing. He knows how to communicate with her. And perhaps there's also a bit of randomness of the synergy of two bodies. Because just because you are have like great skill with sex and you know how to be present, you understand power, you understand mind over matter, you understand instinct over technique, doesn't necessarily mean she's all like every girl you sleep with is automatically going to fall in love with you. Okay. It just increases those chances, which is why I said you need to be a little bit careful. But there's also the factor of of synergy, right? Sexual compatibility, because like I've been with girls who did have a high interest, but I guess they're like, oh my gosh, their ancillary interests are not the same as mine. So I knew this girl, like she was a bit of a pain princess, and I have no problem delivering pain, but there's a certain level of it that is not okay with me. Like if I'm say like striking a girl's face, there's a certain amount that I'm comfortable with. But if it's the amount of force that's wrenching their head completely 90 degrees to the side, that's too much force for me. But that was enough for her. That's what she wanted. And I'm like, this is not the right kind of fit. Right? Because in order for her to really like feel it, she wanted like enough force to like come close to like knocking her on her ass or knock her out. And this is just not for me. That's just not my way. So there is the factor of compatibility. There is the factor of just natural synergy. All right. And I would say some of it is also unlike that instinctual or genetic level, maybe pheromone or instinct level. And and this is just something that you can't prepare for. It's part of the game that is out of your control. And and this is the sort of thing where you have to allow for a little bit of flexibility and let go of this idea that there are chances for um chances for perfect success, right? Like having all the outcomes that you want, because really like perfect success really has more so to do with knowing that you've shown up authentically and that you're not trying to manipulate stuff, you're not trying to hold back, you're not trying to create something that you're not in order to predict some sort of outcome. Like that's not being successful. Like I was talking to this one guy. He was a dating coach, a pickup artist dating coach, who's just all about getting the sex. And he was advising his students which I'm sure he did as well, but he was advising his students to lie, to tell the girl that they were a certain someone that they were not, that they had certain knowledge that they did not have. And I'm like, come on, man. Like that's like, why are you lying to girls? Like, why are you lying to a little girl? What does that do? Like it makes you sound like a fool. Um, and that you're compromising integrity. What, just to like get inside a wet hole? Like, come on, man. Like that's so weak, right? It's like, so if you're willing to compromise your integrity just for a little piece of pussy, like what else are you willing to sacrifice? That's important, right? That sets you. One of the things that would set a man apart from males, right? This is the kind of guy, like in movies, that you wish would die. Like just that's just squirrely and squirmy and deceptive, and you just wait until they get theirs. Like what comes to mind? What was that movie? Was it like the Green Mile? I think it was the Green Mile with Tom Hanks, and there was this like little fuck. Like he was such an asshole, and he was. It was there was like this electric chair scene, and if you remember seeing that movie, and there's a technique where you take a sponge and you dunk the sponge in water, you place it on top of the person's head, and then you place the electrode on top, and the water causes the connection to send electricity through the body very quickly, and the person dies very quickly. But when you don't do that, you basically are just cooking them. And so he pretended he wanted to be curious, and he was such a fuck, like, and he's just like, I want to be curious and not dunk the sponge, but put it up on his head as though I had, and it was just dry sponge. And they're sitting there, and the guy's just cooking in this electric chair. And when you're watching this, it's that type of character, you're like, you fucking slimy fuck, you're gonna get yours. And it's like, that's kind of how I look at this stuff. Like, you slimy piece of shit that's willing to do like dastardly things to yourself in order to get something that's so impermanent, to get something that's so inconsequential, such as like what's between a girl's legs, that you're willing to do this to yourself. Like, how low are you willing to stoop? What else are you capable of? And it's like, man, I would not trust that guy at all. Like, the moment he said that, he had lost any kind of credibility. There's no way that like any man worth his salt would trust him, because he's shown himself to be untrustworthy. If you have to lie to girls, you are untrustworthy. You don't have any honor. So if you're willing to lie to a girl, you're probably willing to lie to another man. And that's not how things work. You don't get very far, right? I mean, maybe if you're very good at lying, but soon, at some point, that shit falls off. And then you become very much alone, because no man wants to fuck with you. No business, no friendship, no acquaintance type stuff. They don't want to bother with you. So it's important that you keep your integrity. And this makes you a better leader. Think about it, if you're a liar, how well are you going to be at leading? Right? Because in order to lead properly, you have to have a certain level of honesty. Like leadership and authenticity go hand in hand. So if you're lying, you cannot be authentic. If you can't be authentic, then you're going to be a shit leader. You're going to have all kinds of stupid, manipulative, and poisonous motivations going on inside you. You're probably going to grasp for control. You're probably going to try to change the perception that she has of you, so that the leadership becomes easier, right? Which is ultimately dishonest. It's deceptive. I'm going to make you think that I'm something that I'm actually not. Just so what? My ego can feel good about, being I don't know, feeling special or something like that. Like that's so childish. Becoming a man is about growing up and letting go of certain things. And just because your body is getting older doesn't mean that you've actually grown up. I've met plenty of people who are older than me who still live life as a child, and that's okay. But there's some things that you're never going to experience. You're never going to experience someone giving you their unbridled trust. It's just not going to happen. And then from that, like that closes off a pathway. So when someone doesn't trust you, then a door closes, right? Or a gate. And beyond that gate, like that gate is trust. And so once someone has given you trust, that opens the gate. And then a whole other pathway of possibilities opens up. And but it's not endless, okay? There's multiple trust gates. So that'll lead for a certain number of, kilometers or whatever, and then you'll reach another gate. Right. And it's you're getting deeper and deeper with trust. But the point is not that there's many gates. The point is that if there's no a lack of trustworthiness, that first gate never opens. If you come off as deceptive, or if you have ulterior motives, or she gets the sensation that you're not being authentic, um, then you're not going to get that trust gate opened, and that completely closes off what you're able to create because you're not going to trust your creative process if you even have one. If you even have like a vision for anything that you want to create, which most guys don't, because all they really want to create is an orgasm, that's like shooting on her tits. And like that's what he wants to create. He wants to do some Jackson Pollock on her body, and that's about it. And maybe some kid listening to this or whatever is like, well, what's wrong with that? Is there anything wrong with that? No, there's not. But it's extremely limited. And if that's all you want to do, fine. Okay. If you just want to make a painting, using red and green, fine. You can absolutely make beautiful paintings using just red and green. But I want all the fucking colors. I want 56 tubes of paint. That's what I want. I don't want just red and green. I want them all and have complete freedom of what I can create from this. I don't want to pretend that there's blue. you know, I want the blue too. I want multiple shades of blue. So, but surely it's quite all right to have just the simple desire. Say, you know what, I don't care about creating all that. Excuse me. I don't care about creating pathways of trust and what can come of that. It's not a major concern of mine. I just want to fuck. And you can totally do that. But I promise you that after a certain point in time, you're going to it's going to lose its luster. And you're going to see some of these things and go, damn, I'm really unsatisfied. And it's just the way anything is. It's like I remember when I got my years ago, I bought a Ducati, and I was so fucking psyched because just for the longest time I've always wanted a Ducati. So I got a Ducati, and I didn't stop riding that thing. I was just constantly riding. I loved it so much. I was riding it even in wintry weather. Like if the roads didn't have like shit on them, like too much salt or snow, I was out riding. I didn't care how cold it was. And then after a while, you just keep after a while, that just became regular for me. I stopped being interested as much because I adapted. My nervous system adapted, and it's not very special. And that's what I'm saying about this stuff is that if you've got just this desire for um, just having sex and not really developing through that or with it or beyond it, that's fine. But you probably will come to a point where it loses its luster, just like my Ducati did. Bloody heck. Appreciate your comments, man. How do you seem to reduce it down to it being all about sex if it doesn't seem to be working for a guy? Some of us are trying for deeper things. Oh, I am not. This is what some are. Like some guys are like, hey, I some guys are like, you know what? I don't care about developing deeper, more immersive things. I just want to fuck. And that's what I was getting at. That that if that's what somebody wants to do, fine. Right. But what I've told guys is that there are greater pathways. There are more things that one can create through opening channels of trust, but that requires much more of the man. He has to become completely a man through authenticity and honesty and not hiding and not being deceptive and not having covert contracts and not having nice guy syndrome and dealing with your shit and having no fucking trauma and all this stuff. You have to be irons the fuck out so that you can be something to actually trust. Then you can lead properly. Okay. But like until that happens, you know, you're having like a great potential for leading improperly. You're going to be driven by um emotions. Man, what is that? Excuse me. I think there might be something burning. I smell like burning plastic or some shit. Just excuse me for a moment. I just want to make sure this isn't an emergency. Well, that's weird. I don't know where that's coming from, but everything seems okay. Just a weird, like plastic smell in the air. But anyways, um, yes, it's not a reduction down to sex. You know, I actually think that that sex is a pretty um, well, it's both. I mean, it's a very simple thing, but it's also a very complex thing. And there's it's something that can actually lead to other more transformative processes. Like to me, like I can utilize sex as a tool that can be it can be something to use for transformation, not just something of that feels good. Okay. You can utilize it to break through certain things with consciousness and you know, pain, attachments, all sorts of stuff. Um, hmm. Terrace, I keep overthinking this, but what is leading and what is not? Well, um, leading is first it's following your own constitution. So it's taking the time to create a constitution so you understand what it is that you stand for. What do you stand on? Um, and this takes some research. It takes a little bit of time. It's not something that you can actually rush, but it gives you sort of a snapshot of like who you are. And it's very similar to like a back in the day when people had like a family coat of arms, and so they would hold up this coat of arms like on a long staff, and from a distance, they could see and like, oh, okay, that's that family, and I understand what they're all about. And so it's sort of like that. And so in knowing your constitution, which is something that I help guys develop at the academy, is that once that's developed, it's quite a bit easier to lead, right? Because you know what you're standing for. And it acts sort of like a filtering process of what's acceptable and what's unacceptable in terms of your own behavior and someone else's. Okay. So the leadership actually begins with the self. You're going to be a shitty person if you're telling people what to do and you can't lead yourself. You're still led by fear. You're led by anger. You're led by impulses. You're led by sexual desire. You're led by worry. You're led by all these things. Okay. And then you're trying to tell other people what to do or another person what to do. right? And that's the worst kind of person, is like, do as I say, not as I do. Like, that's just shit. So, um, so leading starts with yourself. It's putting yourself on a path that you believe in, okay? And consistently remaining there day after day after day. That's leadership, okay? And what's not leading is basically following somebody else's shit, okay? But it begins with yourself. It's following your internal narratives. That's not leading. Following your worries, following your trauma, following your, which turns into, a lot of times, preconceived notions. Following those into preconceived notions into beliefs. Following those beliefs, which then turn into behaviors. So that's not leading. That's being led. That's being led by fear. That's being led by pain. That's being led by false conclusions. That's being led by certain beliefs. Not questioning anything, right? That's not leading. Having the courage to say, I don't believe you. Show me the evidence, right? Like when you are told about certain something in school or by society or by culture or by the government, by religion, and saying, I don't believe it. That doesn't vibe with me. Not leading is just following along because that's the way it's always been done. There's like a funny story that the father of my ex-wife, he had this thing where he always had, like, during Christmas, there was a Christmas ham. And they're kind of like those, like, football shaped things with the marks in it from the string that they would wrap around the ham while they were cooking it, right? And every time he'd take it out, he would cut off the ends. The ends, they kind of look like buttholes, and he would cut off the ends and he'd toss them. And he had done this for ages, like since he was like able to cook food, right? And he was with his younger sister, and they were at their mother's house. And he's like, Mom, this was after years. He was a grown man, and he goes to his mother's, and it was like during a Christmas meal. He says, Mom, we've always cut off the ends of the ham before eating it, before cooking it. Like, why is that? Is that like a bad part of the ham? And she goes, No, honey, my stove has always been, or my oven has always been small. And the hams that we got were huge because there was like a big family and all the friends and stuff would come over. So they got this big ham. It simply wouldn't fit in the oven. So I just had to cut off the ends to make it fit. And then that turned, without the explanation, turns into observation, perception, belief, and then habit. So then for years on, he copied the same exact behavior simply because that's how it's always been done. Now, how many things in your life do you do without question of, because that's just how it's always been done? Probably tons of things. And that's not leading, that's following. That's blindly following, that's unconsciously following. Okay. So part of leading is also waking up your minds to a lot of the things that you've been following and deciding whether you want to continue with that because it's useful to your life, or not continue it because it's not useful to your life. So again, the leading starts with yourself. Okay. And then once you kind of clean your shit up, that you're not doing things out of pain, fear, grasping, hunger, or whatever, then you can clearly lead somebody else. I'm sorry, cleanly lead somebody else. Because if you don't, then you're going to be giving commands and creating parameters and safety fields and boundaries and all this stuff that are heavily motivated by your attachments, heavily motivated by your fear or your hunger or your desire to control. And you're going to keep those motivations under wraps. You're even going to put it under wrap that convinces you that it's not there, operating as something behind the shadows, or behind the curtain, rather. And so you're going to think, I'm cool. I'm just doing this because I believe that's the right thing to do. But really, you're just not admitting to the fact that you're scared that she's going to do X, Y, Z. And therefore, you're going to control it out of that sort of thing. But because to admit that is going to be too real for you, because that would then call into question your identity. It would call into question your masculinity, the whole sense of I'm a man. And it's like, no, you're a scared boy who is using things to protect himself against the big bad girl, just so you can keep her around, so you can keep putting your pee-pee in her wet hole. Like, that's fucked. Like, that's not leadership. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's totally messed up. Is it normal to want to talk to a woman strictly out of lust? If not, what's a better way? To see if she's good enough for your time, to see if she's good enough for your dick, to see if she's good enough for your energy, your presence, your influence, right? So it's fine to have lust. Like, we all have it. I have it. Everybody has lust. It's just, is that a thing that's going to move your decision making? Is it going to make you do stuff, right? Or you're like, hey, sit down. Just sit the fuck down for a second. Let me just see what's up with this girl to see if she's even good enough to unleash you. Like, that's a better way to go about it, in my opinion. Just because she's willing, available, and horny or good looking, like, that's not enough, really. Because again, I don't want to give mediocre sex. I don't want to do mediocre anything. I'm coming in and I'm going to fucking decimate. So I have to determine whether this is the person who's capable, willing, has the right mindset. Because I'm not going to do that, and she's a fucking moron, or she's like, she's got 2 brain cells, or she's fucking decentered, or she's a little bit crazy. Like, no, not at all. I am not adding complexity to my life just to have a few moments. No, I'm not adding complexity. I like things simple. I like things clean. I like things organized, right? I don't like up and down. If there's going to be up and down, it's because I made it go up and down, not an up and down that's out of my control. Fuck that. Just because of this girl. No. You kidding? Not at all. So it's a screening process. And these girls like, well, I don't like to have sex, until like 90 days. Fine, let's make it 120. I don't give a fuck. You think that affects me? You're just making my job easier. Is it because I'm not ruled by pussy? I'm not ruled by pleasure. I enjoy it for sure, but it doesn't rule me. 3rd date. Okay, I don't care. Let's make it the 9th. Let's make it the 21st. Let's make it the 72nd date that we go on before you are even graced with my touch. I don't care. I don't care what like your parameters are. I know you have them. I respect them. Don't care. I'm here to analyze and decipher whether you're good enough. And being willing is just not good enough. But I understand if you're a young man, you're probably going to want to have many experiences, and that's totally fine. Like I think it's good, despite absorbing good information like this. I also think it's good when you're a young man to really get your foot stuck in it. To be like, oh, damn, I fucked this girl good and she's obsessed with me. I don't really want to be with her. I wasn't honest. I wasn't straightforward. And you learn all these lessons by bumping your head. Okay. And I think this is a really important thing to do for young men, right? I think it's really important to just get your feet wet, get your hands dirty with life, get your hands dirty with girls, and hopefully not get into too much trouble, like making a baby when you're not intending to make a baby, or contracting an STD, or some other sort of like physiological or emotional, damage. Trying to keep things not too drastic, but just having sex. That college is great for that. College is like a wonderful, because you're just surrounded by so many people, and everyone's there to become free of their parents. I tell you that the craziest sexual experience that I had in college was with a girl who came from like a Quaker type place in Pennsylvania, where there was just hardcore religion on her from like the moment she was born. So she gets to college, and she was like, she unleashed herself. She still had I mean, she wasn't like a total whore, but she still had her sensibility about her. But it was like once she had access to a guy and they were like kind of seeing each other, she wanted sex all the fucking time. Like, didn't matter what it was, what it looked like, what was happening, where it was. She just wanted it in whatever form. Very, very hungry. And so there's that old adage of like the best way to make a hedge grow is by trimming it. Right? If you want your bushes to grow a lot, trim them, and it causes more growth. And so that's kind of the way it is. Like you suppress something, makes them go crazy. Like there's like my inbox. Well, before my IG got shut down, my inbox was filled with girls from India and the Middle East begging to have someone dominate them, begging them for a dom to lead them, guide them, and bring them into a submissive state. They were so fucking hungry, so horny, and so ready. And I'm like, man, I am not bothering with that. Like that's too much of a headache. That was like sort of like this, like what I was talking about, like with the fake subs and the sub frenzy and that sort of thing. That's just a headache, right? Like come to me correct. If you got some kind of sense about yourself, come to me correct with some decorum, some courtesy, some just general respect. Not look at me like I'm some fucking kink dispenser. You put in some quarters and you get out a spanking. Like that's not how this works, right? I'm not motivated by that. Like have some class. Approach me like someone who has class. So so that's like another filtering thing. It's like just the initial thing. If it's wrong, I'm like, get the fuck out of here. You don't even know how to introduce yourself. You're a Neanderthal. Get out of here. Like you're not even worth saying hello to because you don't even know how to do that right. You can't even fucking sit up straight. So why would I waste my time with you? That like this is how I end up thinking because it's like I'm not gonna like sacrifice what I find important and correct just because some girl's horny. It's like big deal. In 14 days, you're not going to be as horny. It's going to completely shift. So, come back to me when you're on your period and your hormones are in the fucking tanker and you feel like shit and you're depressed. Come at me then. And say, please, sir, I'd like to introduce myself. I hope I'm not interrupting you, but I was wondering if I could ask you some questions. Like this, like when you're feeling like shit, not when you're heightened, when your brain is filled with all kinds of hormones and you like want to just fucking fuck all the time. Like, no, that's too easy. Come at me when you're feeling like crap. Yes. If you've got women approaching you, then count it as a blessing unless they're scams. Most of us will go our entire lives without one woman ever approaching us. We have to put in all the work. Well, you always have to put in the work because that's what men do. We work. We create this entire world. This internet that you're using, this clean air you're breathing, well, the shitty air you're breathing, the water, right? The electricity pumping through our systems here that we can communicate, all made by men. We never stop working. So stop whining about working. We work in every single environment and context that we touch, every single one. And that's just the reality of it. But no, I don't consider it a blessing. Not at all. Because they're just squirrels. I do count it as a blessing if you see a squirrel out in the wild. No. Even if they come up and like eat like little seeds out of your hands, that's not a blessing. It's just a squirrel doing squirrel things. The only reason why you see it as a blessing, which implies like some sort of like holy whatever. I don't even know how to describe it. But something holy coming back at you like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, is because you pedestalize women. You have women on a pedestal, you revere them, you worship them, and because they're out of your reach, seemingly, now they're just highly coveted. And so for someone who does have somebody who has girls like kind of saying stuff and wanting to get at me, that's why you see it as a blessing. Okay. I don't see it as a blessing. I don't see it as a curse, maybe a slight annoyance, but for the most part, it's neutral. It's a squirrel doing squirrel things, and that's it. There's no like you're super important or you're a piece of shit. It's just like you're a thing. You're another organism on this planet. You're not special, but you're also not special. And as a man, you will always be putting in the work. And if you don't enjoy it, well, then you probably don't enjoy being a man. Like I enjoy being in charge. I enjoy having the work to do. I enjoy being observant. I enjoy the others looking to me with wondering what to do or asking, what do you need help with? Not me asking that, them asking me. Like I enjoy being in these positions. If you don't enjoy it, if that feels like a burden, then well, maybe being in the position of a man is not for you. There's plenty of males who are totally fine with not being in the lead. But being in the lead means responsibility, or it means burden. But when you're there, it doesn't really feel like a burden. But it just means like, yes, there's some other stuff that you have to pay attention to, manage, pay attention. Consider, and that's just part of it. This life, it's not that big of a deal. There's some people who really like hunting. They like it so much that they will fucking go out in the wintertime, sit up in a perch, like, those perches that are up high up in a fucking tree. And it's just this little platform that's like kind of stuck to the tree. And they'll sit up there in the fucking cold with a bow for hours and hours and hours. And it doesn't bother them because they just don't, it's like, that's just part of hunting. That's just part of the deal, and they just sit there and they just, it's no like, oh fuck, I wish I could just be hunting from this like really lovely, warm place, they just accept it. It's not even considered as something to be upset about. Just excuse me for 1 second. Pardon me. All right. Sorry about that. Little song that I made. All right. So I don't know how, but my front door got opened. It was really weird. Very strange. Um, Perhaps the dog. I don't know. But I was like, why does my heat keep kicking on and kicking on and kicking on? The fucking front door was open. Terrace, thank you. I usually have high anxiety due to me wanting to say whatever I want, but hesitate, fear, and feel inadequate to say it. What are the ways to discard these inner ideas? Well, you just defined what anxiety is. Okay. So anxiety is when we are in a conflict of two states. Okay. So you're feeling anxiety because you have me wanting to say whatever I want, but hesitating out of fear. Okay. So there's this conflict that's happening. All right. And then anxiety is also characterized by the reality not matching what we want. So if you're sitting there and going like, oh, I wish it would be sunny when it's actually raining, that's going to cause anxiety for some people, because if they want that really strong outcome, but reality is not playing along, that you're going to be really frustrated. So This also is kind of having to do with that because it has to do with outcomes, right? So your hesitation of fear, anxiety, um, I'm sorry, fear and feel inadequate. So this sort of thing is having to do with the fear of the outcome, right? So to you, that's already basically considered, right? You've already considered that this is a likely outcome, like, oh, she's not going to like me. I'm afraid she's not going to like me. She's going to reject me. Or I just simply don't know the outcome. And that causes the hesitation. And and really, like I've said with so many other things, that like the path to manhood is not acquiring certain things. So you might have gone online to look up, like how to be charming, how to be charismatic, things to say when you're introducing yourself to a girl. Like there's probably thousands of videos on YouTube about that stuff. And it's really not about acquiring certain skills. It's actually letting go of certain things, right? You don't need new skills. You need to let go of the shit that you carry around with you, right? That's causing the problem. It's not a lack of knowledge. Okay. Um, it's really just the stuff that you hold on to that's not serving you. So you gotta like really consider letting go of why you think women are so important, why their opinion matters so much to you, their acceptance of your advance or fear of looking like a fool in front of them. And there's two things that can be done. Is one, just devise like a very simple way to introduce yourself. And this is the same one that you learned when you were in grade school, which was simply closing the gap, excusing yourself, saying hello, extending your hand or whatever, smiling, sharing your name, and that's it. Like that's like the simple, most refined introduction you possibly could do. And doing that over and over and over and over and over to condition your nervous system. That's what needs to happen. You need to recondition your nervous system. Okay. So with anything, like I remember when I was just getting into martial arts and I like was having to spar for the first time when I was a kid, that was scary as fuck because I'd never experienced that before. But you keep doing it over and over and over, your nervous system adapts. And you're like, okay, my nerves remember this. I didn't die. I thought I was going to die, but I didn't die. So I can do this again and again. And then the intensity can raise. We can go a little harder. We can go a little faster. And this prevents us from getting stagnant. And so we that feels scary too. But then we adapt and we're like, oh, going at 65%, that's not so bad. 75%, that's not so bad. 85%, that's not so bad. Now we're getting into like real territory, right? Like if we go any more than 85, we might be seriously injuring one another. So we're going to have to kind of put the brakes there. But the point is that you adapt, right? You have to push yourself into making your nervous system adapt to things so that you are now comfortable. And that's just the case with anything, a new job, learning a new language, like whatever it is. It's just you have to make your nervous system adapt through repetition. Now, the other prong of this is understanding where you learned this discomfort in the first place. Where did you learn that talking to not just anybody, but specifically girls is something to feel fear from? Where did you learn that this was something like that's not pleasurable? That you learned to be afraid of it, that you learned to feel something bad. Where did you learn this? Where did you come up with this belief? Where did your emotions come up with this belief? Right? This emotional understanding. That's going to take some digging, take some journaling, some self reflection, that sort of thing. And, there's no quick answer to that. There could be something serious. There could be not so something serious, right? Some guys, like they have like a terrible experience in like first grade, and that just sets the precedent. It's not like terrible objectively, but for the child at the time, yeah, it was something terrible. Or it could be something very serious that it's connected to mom or dad. And this is, takes some more time to unravel. But there is a reason, right? This just doesn't it's not like a natural thing to be afraid of girls. Like, for what reason? Like, are they covered with spikes, like poisonous quills? Can their breath like cause your skin to melt off? Like, is there like an intrinsic, like, there's an intrinsic reason to be afraid of um Siberian tigers, right? They're the largest big cats, where they're like 700 pounds. I just learned that they have the capacity to jump fucking 12 feet in the air, and they can leap horizontally anywhere from like 20 to 30 feet. So if you're like 30 feet away from a tiger, you are not safe. Not safe at all. And like, with one bite, they can basically pop your head like a grape. All right. That's something intrinsically to be afraid of. All right. But girls, like, how did girls become something to fear? Where did your nervous system learn that, and why? That's something for you to figure out. That's part of what happens in mentorship, is sorting out that shit, because it can be confusing, because sometimes it's hard to sort out, because it's like a finger trying to touch the tip of its own finger, okay? Or trying to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, because that which is being examined is the examiner. So it's kind of hard sometimes, okay? But if you're good with self-reflection, self-introspection, writing and things like that, and being open and honest with your own ego, well, then it can work out, okay? But if you need help along those lines, it's helpful to have a mentor, okay? So I hope that that helped with your question. BH, what I meant was, we have to approach 1,000 women trying to get one to go out with us because they are interested in us. How do you know that they're not interested in you? To have one already interested to start would be incredible. Okay. So have you approached 1,000 women? Something tells me that you are in your head a lot. um, Something tells me that you're in your head a lot. Something tells me you're in your emotions a lot. And I know just by your next comment here, just a reason to fear them, destroying your life like that. Like, I don't know, like, has your life been destroyed? Like, have you lost life? uh, but I don't think that you've even spoken to 1,000 women in your life. I would love to know how many women you actually talk to in a month. How much actual feet on pavement action do you do in a month? And I guarantee it's not even close to 1,000. Not even close. Okay. Because if you're doing, like, say, like, what Lucario, he suggests, what does he say, like 10 a day, something like that? 10 women a day, or 20 women. I can't remember what he says. But even at 10 a day, that's what, 300 women in a month, if you're doing 10 a day. And something tells me you don't even do that even remotely close. Okay. You think too much, you feel too much, and you don't do enough. And you think you do everything. But if we actually looked at the real actions, the objective things, I don't think you do much at all. One reason to fear them is that they can destroy your life, or at least humiliate you by recording. The creep who dared to recording you. Oh, thank you. Yes, you're right. You're right, official. He says 25. I say 10 to my guys. 10 a day. Because I think that's more manageable, especially if you're like busy. But and also if you're not in like a major metropolitan. So summertime in New York, yes, that would be very easy to talk to 25 a day. All you got to do is just go to, like, any kind of square, Washington Square Park, Union Square, go up where, like, the Columbus Circle, like near the entrance to Central Park, Times Square. Yeah, you can easily talk to 25 a day. But if you're not in these situations, then 25 is going to be a little hard. But anyways, one reason to fear them, they can destroy your life. That is, again, that's projected. I think you've heard too many stories. I think you've adopted certain beliefs, and are coming to these conclusions based on stories you've read. Perhaps maybe you've had your heart broken or whatever. That's not destroying your life. Um, I have known who've had their lives destroyed, but it's not because the girl. It all started with him a long time ago. Sort of just with him. And this is probably not something guys are going to fully grasp, but it, you can absolutely, well, Picasso said that the future of every painting is determined by the first stroke. So if you are uh, starting the strokes wrong, right, and you're leading wrong, you have no idea about leadership, you're transfixed by pussy, you are needy for approval and wanting to do this or that. Girls mean more than they actually should. um, then that stroke is going to cause massive problems. You're going to create more problems for yourself than solutions. And then when it comes to a head, like where there's say a marriage, and then she's gradually losing respect for you because your real self, your real unhealed, misaligned, needy, sex obsessed self is showing its ass, and she's losing respect for you on the daily, and you're begging for her attention, you're begging for approval, you're grumpy and grumbling and, kind of pissing at her that she just why is she such a bitch and she would never respect me and she doesn't even want to suck my dick anymore, and like, oh my gosh, if he even touches me it's like amazing. I'm like, "Mom, but I do all this stuff," and like, oh my gosh, the passive aggressive and guilt trips that I would love to instill on her, and the marriage is just crumbling to pieces. And it all started with with it doing it wrong in the first place, being the wrong person in the first place. And I don't mean being handsome or rich, but I mean being misaligned in the first place, having attachments like towards women, having neediness towards women. This is the thing that's fucking up, guys. This is the first seed that takes a long time to germinate. But that is the thing that led to her, the wife or the girlfriend of a long time, just losing respect and saying, "You know what? I'd rather suck Bob from accounting's dick than yours, because just looking at you leaves a terrible taste in my mouth because there's such a loss of respect." And you think, well, I do pay all these bills and I've been doing this for so long. Who gives a fuck? Respect is not something like a bank account that you put in some stuff and it grows interest. That's not how it works. If it shows up wrong day after day after day, you lose respect. That's just how it works. It doesn't happen when you, like that guy that I saw earlier today, the dude wearing the the hoodie that said something about respect. You can't announce it and demand respect. It's something that grows on you. It grows on you, like out of your control. Like you can't make the respect happen. You can just like do your best you can, I guess, to make yourself um, worthy of respect. And then if it happens, it happens. But it should never really be something that you're seeking or demanding or hungry for, right? Like if it happens, great. Okay. But I'm not seeking your respect in the first place, girl. It doesn't really do much for me. But if you want like any of my involvements, it's gonna be required. But I'm not gonna like make it happen. Just if I am in such a way that, causes you to have a natural reaction of respect, then great. If it doesn't, then we are both wasting each other's time. You should not be in my presence and I shouldn't be in yours. But at least humiliate you with recording the creep who dared to speak to them. You have fear fantasies in your head. I have never heard of this before. I've spoken to hundreds of men, and not once have I heard of a story where he was humiliated by some girl recording him as he walked up to her, and then she posted it on her socials. I thought you were older than me. Why are you having 13-year-old concerns? Like concerns of like a 13-year-old boy. Why are you, as a man who's older than I am, because I think you are older than I am, having these kind of concerns? Like, doesn't this seem strange to you? It seems really strange, right? Like, official here, he he senses it too. Like, this is strange thinking, man. Yeah. Um, but you see, the thing is that when I was single, I could meet and get a first date maybe 3 times a year. No, there's no way I could even find 10 women a day to approach. This could be partially due to your environment, but also, let me tell you about this active client of mine. He has trouble with girls, but mostly it's because he, every single girl he interacts with, he views her as potential girlfriend. Every single one. And like, regardless of like how attracted he is to her or her interests or any sort of thing that might align them, he automatically starts jumping ahead into considering her potential girlfriend territory. And it's completely warps how he deals with it. Like, he starts treating her differently, and a complete stranger, right? And so to him, like, finding a girl is also hard because he's always looking for a girlfriend. When the approaching 10 women has nothing to do with the girl. It's not about getting the girl. Approaching 10 women a day is about reconditioning your nervous system and your emotions and your perceptions such that these things change so that you no longer feel this discomfort, but also so you get to a point where you don't really need them, where it's no longer something you're hungry for through the exposure. And then you're like, like, this is not really that big of a deal. I was exalting these squirrels. I made them into something so special. And with the help of media and culture and all this stuff, and then I've come to understand that they're just squirrels. No more, no less. Just another organism here on this planet. And that is it. If they're special, it's because I've determined them to be special based on my program, based on my system. But nothing's like inherently special. It's when they've gone through my funnel, basically, and my funnel and my filters, and you get to the other side. Now that's special. That's how one becomes special to me, right? Because there's no like objective, like covering all the bases for everybody special, right? Sure, maybe we all like special because we are individual lives and, you know, human life is precious, that sort of thing. But there's no specialness, right? You're just this carbon-based life form, is born, grows up, grows old, and dies. We're basically this tube where we put material in one end and then it comes out of the other end. And we just like do stuff. There's nothing really special about that. We mimic the behaviors of so many other creatures on this planet. Okay, we've just lost all of our hair and we cover it with this stuff. It's, when you start looking at things plainly, it's, without your emotions, without your perceptions, without your beliefs, like just as they are, things just kind of feel a lot lighter. It's really just our mindset, it's our perceptions, our beliefs, our attachments that make things heavier than they actually are. Girls are just they're not that big of a deal. It's getting used to being comfortable with yourself, with and around others, in this case, specifically women, but it's not about the women. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's really less complicated than people are making it out to be. It's really not that big of a deal. Um, you circle back around. It's like I mention this quote a lot because it's so, I don't know, so pertinent. But it's a Buddhist quote. Bruce Lee, he excuse me, I gotta get to bed. But Bruce Lee appropriated it. But the Buddhist quote goes, in the beginning, mountains are just mountains and trees are just trees. In the middle, mountains are no longer mountains and trees are no longer trees. And then, or streams. I can't remember which. But then in the end, mountains are just mountains and streams are just streams. So, in the beginning, like when you're a novice with something, you don't realize the complexity or importance of anything. You just kind of accept things as they are. Just like a kid who doesn't know much about interpersonal dynamics. And he's like, yeah, like whatever, like girls over there, like they're stinky and they have cooties and they're annoying, like whatever. And then you learn a little bit more about girls or interpersonal dynamics. And then there's just this mountain of information. There's psychology from all these different things and all this stuff and this podcast and those books and, this research and that scientist over there in the university of whatever. And it's this massively complex thing of human interaction. Okay. And then once you get past a bunch of that with just some time, it goes back to being, oh, girls are just stinky and they have cooties. That's really what you make full circle because they just become simple. You're like, I don't even really need to think about all that stuff. What would have been much more worthwhile venture during in that middle period when I was putting so much attention on that stuff out there, I could have turned all that energy here and I would have benefited tenfold. Because really, once you understand yourself, you can greatly understand others very well, especially if you have gone through your own suffering. You've gone through your own pain and your fears and your worry and your attachments and all that bullshit, the perceived sense of self and the perceived suffering and the perceived victim and all this crap that's manufactured inside you that you hold on to as though it's precious, but it's not. Then you really get to know yourself. You really, really get to know yourself. And then you realize everybody's doing this shit. And then once you really know yourself through going through these things and coming out on the other side, you can then pretty much look at anybody and know them because they're not much different than you. At the processing of these things, you get to see people pretty clearly, pretty quickly. And it's not that complex. And so knowing yourself is much more beneficial than trying to understand squirrels. Because all that knowledge doesn't help anybody. I was listening to this conversation of, it was on Clubhouse, and there's this big room. There's maybe 60 people in there, and they were discussing red pill. And there were these guys who were all hardcore about red pill, and how they know the truth and all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, there's these guys who they seem to have studied so much of this praxeology, as they call it, which is, study of human behavior or something. They know so much about female nature, yet every single one of them is single without girls. If you know so much, how is it that you can't have a girl sitting next to you right now? What is that knowledge doing besides just reinforcing your fear, reinforcing your anxiety, reinforcing and justifying the position that says, I'm afraid to do something. So I'm going to sit here, but now I've acquired this praxeology, so to speak. It's not a belief system that reinforces me so that I can stay where I am. It justifies me not moving. And say, well, of course I'm not with a girl because I know about their wretchedness. I know about how nasty they can be. I dodged a bullet by learning all these things about these deplorable, evil, despicable female nature. And that's why I'm sitting here by myself, even though I'm yearning. I'm not going to say this out loud, but I'm yearning to be with a woman. But I'm not going to say that out loud because that's going to fly in the face of all the years that I've spent pushing this fucking ideology into my head. So I'm not going to admit that. I'm not going to admit that I'm really just fucking lonely and I love women. I'm fucking obsessed with women, but I've turned that obsession into not this neediness because that looks weak. That sounds weak. I'm not going to admit to that, but I'm going to turn it into this study And this study, I'm going to learn so much about them. And I'm going to sound like this authority, like I really know what I'm talking about. Because truly, like a lot of that stuff does sound like it holds water. Okay. It's sensible sounding, it's scientific sounding. Okay. But they're sitting there alone, trying to manage their porn addiction. And it's like, how successful are you? Like, really? Not that women should be a measure of success, but are you, like, your internal world, how much better is it now after red pilling yourself than what it was before that? Because you were suffering then and you're suffering now. It's just now you just seem a little bit more bitter and less naive, but you're still suffering. So, what did you do with all that knowledge? How has that benefited you in the slightest? Well, I'm not getting like raked over the coals in family court or whatever. It's like, dude, you're not even fucking married. You're not, there's not even a girl there to even consider marriage to then be afraid of family court with. So, what are you talking about? And that's these guys. Like, they'll talk about like the dangers of family court. And it's like, dude, you haven't had a girlfriend in fucking 8 years. So, what are you afraid of? There's no like family court in sight. It's not even close. And like, well, they're gonna take you for what you've got, because this, the law system is all fucked up and skewed in their direction. Really? How many homes do you own? Oh, zero? Great. What assets do you have? Oh, nothing? Great. Like this, I'm talking like, not saying guys don't have this stuff, but the vast majority of guys don't. The male home ownership is going down. They're not sitting here like sitting on mountains of Bitcoin. They're not sitting here on like a high portfolio that they built up since they were a young lad. They're not. Most dudes are just working a regular job. They've got little savings. They're not sitting on assets. They're not sitting on property. They're not sitting on investments. So what the fuck are they so concerned about? And there's not, again, even a girl sitting next to them to even have these concerns. And they'll sit back and go, well, they're so bad. That's why I'm not talking to them. Really? It couldn't be because you're just fucking scared and you're so fragile that you can't even admit that you're scared to talk to girls because you're afraid that they're going to reject you. Because the reality is that you have made them a measuring stick for your self-worth. And you made this measuring stick a long time ago. It's got little kid fingerprints all over it. But that's a really challenging thing to sort out. Really challenging. Because you've been holding that truth for a long time. That's why, you went down this fucking stupid red pill pathway to begin with. To try to cope with all of that stuff when you could have actually coped with it in a real way. But the real way is painful, it's scary, it's uncomfortable. And, so that's now fun. But it is fun to criticize women. It is fun to watch some other guy, right? What do they call that? Like vicariously, okay? Living vicariously through another guy who's so-called putting a woman in her place, making her look bad on camera, making her look bad on audio or sound stupid. Ha ha! She got hers. She had hers. Someone fixed her wagon. Ha ha! What an idiot. Ha ha! You know what they never talk about? Any of these guys. And maybe it's because they're purposely hiding the truth, because it raises ratings, right? It raises viewership when you are able to tap into people's ignorance and their emotions. Remember, in the beginning, we talked about the power of emotion and the power of marketing and advertising. Well, podcasters, they're not stupid either. They know how to do this. So either they're not fully knowledgeable about the full extension of, the full extent of female nature, or they are purposely hiding it because if they were to reveal, then that would just like kind of drive down their user base who can't possibly relate. And that's why some of my stuff, it's like there's some of my videos that are do terribly because it contains information that a lot of guys cannot relate to. It's over their head. It's beyond their conception. And what's also beyond some of the conception of guys is the full breadth of female nature. Like female nature at its core doesn't actually have any sort of identity or form. It's designed to be formless so that it can take the form of a form. That's female nature. And when it doesn't have that, that's when it starts creating its own form so that it can survive and be more adaptive in terms of like the world around it. And this is a survivability instinct. But when there's strong containment, they actually become formless. Miles talks about girls being actually like a blank slate. Like they don't really have an identity. And I know what he's getting at. It sounds harsher when he puts it that way, but the nature of the existence of them is free, is as a freeing state, is to be liquid, is to be free, vulnerable, open. And when they're like this, identity becomes really, really thin. Sense of self becomes thin, and they become the vessel that they're inside, like water to a pitcher. And that is really the nature of women, is to be fully adaptive to a container that can actually hold them. The nature that they're talking about, that Fresh and Fit has been talking about, whatever podcast, and just dozens and dozens of red pill channels, okay, that are more hardcore red pill than those guys. Those are just the ones where they get into stupid arguments with girls. But there's like tons. What was a big one from back in the day? Sandman? Was that one of them? I think it was this guy. I think his name was Sandman. He had a really weird voice. But he was like, there's other like Spider-Man something, Spider Dude. He always wears a Spider-Man mask and he talks about like red pill shit. But he's I think he's still active. I don't know. But anyways, like that shit, it's all based around like the nature of women that is adaptive. Okay, it's adaptive to an environment that is not containing them, so they have to kind of create their own containment, which leads someone to be more crafty, be more aware, maybe develop moxie, develop defensive maneuvers, like physically, emotionally, psychologically, basically becoming a player of the game. Okay, like you can't step out on the field and be open and vulnerable. You'll get fucking destroyed. Okay, you have to learn the game. You have to learn the rules. You have to wear the armor. You got to be able to maneuver and communicate and think on your feet and this, that, and the other. Okay, like to be good at the game, you got to be sharp. You got to be loose and float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Like you have to be like that. That's not a natural state for girls. But if they're just left to kind of fend for themselves, they will adapt as a coping mechanism to survive. But to survive requires certain things to develop. And this is when they get criticized. Oh, you're acting like a man. You're thinking like a man. You're strategic like a man. You're manipulative the way a man is, but even more so because, women understand the subtler in between the lines sort of things between, human behavior and human communication. So they can actually get better and slicker with playing the game when they're left to play it without any containment, and they make their own containment, and then they become strong and independent. But all this does is separate them deeper from their core femininity, their core identity, which is actually formless. This is beautiful. And, but so guys will meet that end, the developed, manufactured end of female nature, and say that's female nature. But all you're doing is just experiencing something that's been conditioned. It's like I make that dog analogy of say a dog who's raised in like a really shitty environment. Okay. Now let's say there's somebody who they've never experienced dogs before in their life. Never. and they meet, like, say, like 5 dogs. And it just so happened that all 5 of these dogs were raised in terrible fucking environments, like abusive environments. So their first exposure to these 5 dogs are like, dogs fucking suck. Like, they're aggressive, they're not trustful, they're just awful creatures. Like, I think I'm gonna kinda keep my distance from dogs. They kind of scare me. Okay. Now, versus like, is that really the nature of dogs? No, that's the conditioned nature of dogs. Like, that's the nature of the dog in that conditioned state. So I'm not surprised that a lot of guys are coming to the conclusion of this is what women's nature is. That's just a version of it. That's a conditioned, manufactured version of the natural state. I mean, it's natural for that environment. We can say, like, is this natural that I'm wearing this jacket with, like, electricity lights on me, using a microphone in this house made of, like, brick and plaster and metal? Like, is that natural? Not really. It's manufactured, but we would say, oh, it's natural of human beings because this is what we naturally do. We make structures, we make clothing, we make stuff, tools, right? But is it, but it's not natural. Doesn't come from the planet or anything like that. It's all made. So, but we would say that this is part of natural human behavior to do these things. So, yes, it is natural for her to act that way. That is part of her nature, is to protect, to survive. And that's how it looks when it's in that state. But this is the state that a lot of guys are experiencing. And they're like, wow, women are shit. Just like those dogs. They're like, oh, those dogs are shit. But really, there's this whole other side of the female nature that so many guys don't see, where it's completely selfless, where it's entirely giving, where it's self-sacrificing, where it's mindless, where it's joyful, where it's horny, where it's giving. It's empty, like empty of a self, where its desire and happiness is to serve. Where doing things for the container feels better than receiving something. That's part of the nature as well. But they're just not going to be, but again, like, that's actually a reaction as well. Just like the armor and all that other stuff and the strategy and stuff, that's all a reaction to a certain stimuli or a lack of stimuli. Well, a lack of a particular kind. That other behavior that I just described is also a reaction from a particular stimuli. And so, because I know that it's possible, this is what I experience in my own life. And no, I'm not rich. No, I'm not tall. No, I'm not good looking. No, I'm not ripped. No, I'm not famous. And I only have a few tattoos. So what gives? There's something else. There's something I know that a number of guys don't know. And it has to do with presence and realizing what presence does to a woman's mind and her heart, her emotions, how she sees herself, and how that presence can affect what she does. How it can affect how she sees herself, how she shows up, what shows up, and what drops away, and just keeps dropping away and dropping away. Until then she becomes an extension of what it is that you are. These guys aren't talking about that shit because they've never experienced it, or they're purposely withholding it for marketing purposes. But something tells me, just out of the statistics of it, of like how many guys actually know how to show up in such a way that creates containment that the woman can become liquid and lose herself in you without becoming crazy and obsessive, but actually more peaceful and happier, not full of anxiety. Okay. Like chasing a bad boy. That's not the same thing. But more peaceful, more grounded, but less of an identity. I don't hear any guys talking about this shit. Nowhere. Because they don't know how to cultivate it. They've never experienced it. They don't really know the full scope of female nature. They only know what they know. I will hold like a little benefit of the doubt that some know, but they're just not speaking on it because that's just going to be bad for their brand. and they'll lose however many thousands or hundreds of thousands of viewers. So they just kind of hold back. So they're like, oh yeah, the host, he's just like me. These bitches are so fucking manipulative. All they want is like your money and your time and this and that, blah, blah, blah. Blah. That's not that's not really it. Yes, the cope is real. Yeah. Yep. Shut up. At 26, I'm now unlearning those things and everything that does not align with the man I'm becoming. Yeah. Shit. Like you've got such a like a great opportunity at 26. Like you're so young that, you know, like keep focus, right? Keep letting go, keep discovering, keep looking past your ego when it wants to defend itself, or be scared or aggressive with you. Excuse me, and really push through that and become like in probably 5 years, you're going to be such a grounded person that like basically like probably less than 5 years, but like I'm just you choosing that as like an even number to land on. Um, but yeah, after a period of time, basically, you're gonna be like immovable, but not in a way that you're like you're resisting or bracing. This is what I'm talking about, like the mountain mind. Like the mountain doesn't resist anything. It just is. It's just grounded, right? It's not fighting against the wind. It's just there. And that's just the wind is blowing. It's not that big of a deal. But but if those aren't the women that we ever meet, if we only ever meet the mean dogs, then that's all we have to go by. Exactly. But that doesn't mean that you like that becomes your perception based on a limited belief and limited exposure, right? Well, that depends on if you're actually putting in any kind of effort, and I don't think that you are. I don't think you're putting in any effort whatsoever. I think you go to sources, you make conclusions based on observing information that you see online, but that's not real, like a heartbeat in front of you. I don't think there's very many heartbeats in front of you that are occurring on a regular basis. Okay. Because again, you're looking for the woman to come in and fill the space instead of actually using the woman so that you can become comfortable in your space such that you don't actually need them anymore. And when you don't need them anymore, you put off a completely different vibe. Your aura changes, your presence changes when they can really smell it on you that you don't need them, that you don't really even like them, but you don't dislike them, but you also don't like them. Then they're like, wait a second, like that's unique. What's up with that person there? What's up with that mindset? What's up with that feeling of that aura or that vibe? I don't understand. I want to know more. Because every guy I come across either hates me or wants to fuck me, right? Or is in love with me. And it's like, but to be like in talk to somebody or in the presence of someone's just kind of indifferent and not like forced indifference so I can get to the point where like she likes me, nothing like that, like actual indifference. Whereas I don't like her, but I don't dislike her. It just is. And then you're like, well, why are you here? Like why like when I'm done with here, I've got like this girl hit me up, um, asking I know she's asking for like to be a submissive of mine. And it's I'm not a rude person, so like I could just ghost her, but I don't think it's honorable behavior. So I have to like kind of deal with this, right? But it's not like I dislike it, but I don't like it either. It's just something I have to do, right? Sort of like bills, right? Or going to the gym. It's like I don't like it, but I don't dislike it. It's just something I have to do. And once you can get to the place of this neutrality with girls, you're really gonna have a problem. Like, you're gonna have a problem if you're pushing them away, and you're like, "These fucking cunts are shitty," all right? And you're gonna have a problem if you're like, "Oh my gosh, I love women, I want them all over the place." You're gonna have issues with both of those, all right? You're not going to have peace until you are able to view them neutrally or with neutrality. That's just the way it is. And then it has to do with letting go, not like bringing on new mindsets. Okay, it's letting go of the ones you already have, because the the base system, right? Like the what do they call that? Like the default settings is neutral. Like think about when a baby is born, they're like looking at the world. Okay, everything is neutral. Everything is cool. It's like, oh yeah, that's just the thing. And then they learn through experiences and influence in society and parents and like, no, this is bad. Oh, that's good. This, that, the other. Like, I even had like this weird, because just I'm a weirdo. I was like with my second kid, I was like, what if I just like trains them to think and believe different stuff? Okay. Like I show them like a card with like the color red, because I spent a lot of time like raising my kids. So I'm like, okay, this one, I'm going to show them red, but tell them it means green. So when they so they come up with this whole belief structure of like, no, the red is actually, they call it green, and the color green they actually call red. Of course, that would be cruel and unusual, but um, they probably take away my kid. But just the idea that this is neutral, we learn everything. Okay, our base model is just a very neutral thing. It's very neutral, and then we come to these conclusions. And because we have emotions, that starts to color and twist and modify some of these things. Instead of being like, oh, like this person said that thing. Isn't that interesting? Like the way, like, I don't know, like Data would look at stuff, or Spock, right? And you're like, oh, that's curious. But you've got these emotions wrapped up in it. And then you're like, oh, I don't like how that felt. That means you don't like me. That means I'm not good enough. Then that turns into this whole fucking thing. Right. And all they said was like, ew, why are you wearing that shirt today, Billy? you know? And it's like, maybe it's got a picture of like Elmo on it, and like she just doesn't like Elmo. Right. Or she thinks Elmo's stupid. Right. And that's like her own thing. And just says it because there's a picture of Elmo, and now you're like, oh my gosh, like there's something wrong with me. Right? Like we fuck shit up with our perceptions, our beliefs, and our emotions. Just learn to see things as they are, just plainly, plain, not with colors, not with photo filters, not with assumptions, not preconceived notions, not presuppositions, not casting them with beliefs or your opinion, just as it is. And if there's no conclusion or anything like that, then just leave it. Just leave it as it is. And things just lighten. Things lighten up. And the lighter you are, the more peace you can be. And I don't care how many women you get, that will never be able to create for you what I just described. They will not be able to bring peace to you. Okay? They will not bring you tranquility. They will not release anxiety. Like all the shit that you carry around with you that you think the presence of a girl will solve won't. I promise you. I will put my life savings on it. It will not work. And actually, because you're holding on to those things and trying to make the woman cure you of these things or subside or subdue these feelings, it will actually exacerbate them. It's like trying to put out a fire with thinking that if you pour gasoline on it, because it's a liquid, it will make the fire go out. No, it's not the case. I was just going to tell a funny story that I had about fire when I was a kid, but I'm not going to get into that. Well said, Mr. Justin. It's a state of being, not a state of trying, from what I've experienced. Yes. Yeah. And that's a big shift, man. Like getting away from this idea of trying. Like, I know it's so fucking cliche, that whole Yoda thing, but it's real. Like it's actually real. It sounds stupid. It's very bumper sticker, but there's a lot of reality to it. There's a lot of truth there. Of there is no trying. Like when you say I'll try, you're giving yourself elbow room to fail. Either you're fucking doing it or you're not doing it, right? If I say draw the sword from the scabbard, okay, it's either in the scabbard or it's out of the scabbard. There's no trying to draw it out. Like there's this like phase in between where it's like in this alternate reality of being drawn and not drawn, and it paradoxically exists in both realities at the same time. Like that's not something you can actually do. Either it's in the scabbard or it's out of the scabbard. Even if just the tip of it is still in the scabbard, it's still in the scabbard. It is not out. Out is not in. It's very simple. It's very clear, very clean, right? Either it's in or it's out. Okay. And that's the difference between trying and doing. When you say try, you give yourself wiggle room to say, like, well, I maybe kind of did. And like, oh, I give it some effort. And you give yourself this leeway when you say try. Okay. Either you're going to fucking do it and you're going to draw the blade, or you're not going to fucking do it and you're not going to draw the blade. And you're going to say, I'm a lazy coward. And that's it. And you have to admit to yourself that you're not yet the man that you want to be. And instead, and then usually what happens is the guys get sad. Oh, I feel so bad that I'm not able to do the thing. I can't be the man I want to be. And that is a defense mechanism. That is another like this automatic cope that arises so that you don't have to actually do anything, right? It's another layer that your ego like kind of like shoots out this other, defense so that you don't get the gumption to do something. And it gives you this nice, fat, wet slop of sadness. Oh, and now your energy, your vibe, your whole thing just drops down and you get heavy. You're like, I'm so depressed because I realized I'm not the dude. I'm just going to wallow for a little while, and then you don't do anything. And you're like, oh, what's on TV? Maybe I'll go eat some ice cream. That'll feel better. Maybe I'll crack another beer. Yeah, cope and then cope and then cope and then cope because you're coping, and you just layer your copes until you pass out. And then you don't have to think about it the next day because then you have to get up for work. When you could take the simpler but more painful path and don't let that sadness come in. Accept the realization as just plain fact, plain objectivity, and don't let your emotions come in and color the fucking thing because it's not going to help you. It's like when I was teaching illustration, and part of the thing, I tell this story often, but so forgive me if you've heard this like a million times, but part of it is exposing them to great works of art, right? Through like slide presentations and stuff like that. This was all online anyways. It was like through Zoom. So I'm showing this collection I have, and for people who have not seen some of these, they're like, holy shit, this is amazing work. And then that awe for some of the students turns into sorrow, and they want to put down their materials, and they say, wow, that's so good. Then I couldn't even come close to producing something like that. I might as well give up now. And they let their sadness take over. And this just drives them down. When really, that's just a cope of facing what you actually have to do, which is put on your engineer hat and look at things from a strategic perspective instead of an emotional perspective. And you look at these paintings that say, look, all right, great that you find that they're awesome, or you're intimidated by them. Okay, fine. Put that aside. Look at it and I'm trying to understand how this person was able to just put marks on a canvas with color and so on, whatever, and produce an emotional effect in you of saying, wow, I really want that, or I want to go there, I want to be there, I want to do that, I want to have it, or whatever the image is. Or just, my goodness, that's beautiful, or wow, that's scary, or my goodness, that's sad. Okay? And it's just a bunch of marks on a surface. And so instead of getting wrapped up in the emotions, look at it from an engineer's perspective and say, well, how do they do that? What did they do in terms of, form, lighting, shadow, shape, perspective, all the different tools of creating an image such that I had an emotional reaction? How did they do that? Let me reverse engineer this sort of thing so I can understand, not necessarily copy, but to understand the mechanisms at work here. Okay. That's much better. But no, guys they get wrapped up in their emotions. They get lost in their emotions. Another thing comes to mind, which is one of the saddest moments in film. It's like at least from the 80s, anyways. But that 80s film, Never Ending Story, if you've ever seen it, it's about this little boy who he's bullied at school, and he finds this book, and he goes into this bookstore, and it's a magical kind of book, and he reads this book, and when he reads it, he's like transported into the story. And it's a fantasy adventure. It's cute. If you haven't seen this, like, check it out. The Never Ending Story. But there's this part where the hero is riding on a horse named Artex, and they need to go to this ancient turtle who's like thousands of years old, and it's enormous. It's huge fucking turtle, like it's dinosaur sized, and it lives in this particular bog, this swamp, and it's called like the Swamp of Despair or something like that. And the thing is that I think you like can't stop moving. Like if you stop moving in the bog or swamp, like something happens where it'll make you feel sad. And if you kind of stick with it, you'll start sinking into the swamp, and then eventually you'll drown. And he was, they're trudging through it and trying to stay positive and stuff, thinking, feel the sadness just starting to wash over them as they're trying to get to the turtle because it has like, very important information. And as they're going, Artax starts to slow down. And it's like, no, 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 Artax, don't stop. Just keep going, keep going. Like, I love you. I believe in you. Let's go. And, it just gives in. And like Artax, and you just watch this horse just sinking into the mud, and it just slowly is like suffocating on mud and dying. But it was like due to also the extreme sadness. One of the saddest parts in film that I've ever seen, at least that I remember as a kid. And then the hero is like, oh shit, like I can't let that drag me down. Like I need this information to then help save reality or whatever. Um, but yeah, you don't want to do that. You don't want to be like just dragged into those states, you know, um, because that's what'll happen. You'll get dragged in, and then you kind of it like justifies not doing anything. So, all right, I'm going to pull this to a close. I'm starting to meander. I'm getting tired. So I appreciate you guys joining me this evening, talking about this topic. If you've forgotten what we've gone over, the four sexual principles, just rewind it. It's mind over matter, the importance of power, instinct over technique, and good sex is the king of attraction. So, but if you need more details around that sort of thing, by all means, just rewind it and take some notes. So I appreciate you joining me here this evening, and I look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. All right, until next time, take it easy.